introduction as well. Again, I'm very honored to be in this room. I think there's a lot. I can't see the people in the room, but I can imagine the audiences and a lot of people who I've admired as I've grown up as a PhD student, like my time in Spotify and now. So I'm gonna share like a view from a very different lens. Like, I mean, a few years ago, during my time as a practitioner building recommendation systems, at least I focus a lot on, like, as the rest of you in the audience, a lot on like personalized consumption. And recently I've switched to start working on agentic execution. So that's why like this perspective is like switching from personalized consumption to personalized execution. And again, I think a lot of people in the room are a lot more experts on these topics, both of them individually together than me. Would really appreciate feedback even after this talk on how the thinking is. Quick background for me, I'm Rishabh. We just started up a few months ago on a stealth AI employee startup. Previously, I spent some time at Spotify, Sourcegraph, with a PhD in machine learning, and mostly working on personalization over the last few years. Now, the talk outline for today is that how do we transition from personalized consumption to personalized execution? And I want to start by giving a quick view of how Rex's systems have evolved. And also I want to give a lens of like, when I look at the industry, then who needs what and when? This is a different lens around like, hey, if you look at the spectrum of companies right now, not everybody can do counterfactual evaluation. I mean, like 80% of companies don't even know what the term means, right? So how does, at least from an industrial perspective, what sort of needs are across different companies of different stages? And once you do that, then I'm going to switch to talk about the fundamental shift in personalization paradigm I see, is specifically start focusing on the agentic execution and some of the challenges which lie ahead of us. This is a lot of insights from a joint work from a lot of experts, a lot of people I didn't have photos of. So again, really, yeah, thankful for like the industry-wide collaborations we've done over the last few years. Now, if we take a step back, right, then when I look at the Rexis industry or search recommendations, then we started like 20 years ago with like single retrievers. We then transitioned to two-stage ranking. We then transitioned to looking at rewards, bandits, looking at like different signals. We then transitioned to multi-objective systems, balancers, and then we eventually evolved into like a very, very huge multi-model systems, which are very complex in itself, right? And one example would be like if you're looking at any of these apps these days, they're doing a lot of balancing, doing a lot of evaluation. You start looking at the user side, supplier side, platform side, your multi-objective. You start developing intent models, you personalize based on intent. You start developing in-session personalization capabilities. You start adding different nuances of reward modeling, like long-term reward, short-term reward, proxies, causal inference. You start doing a lot of feedback loops, adaptive decisioning, measurement, and so on, right? So this is how we as a field have evolved into designing most of these systems, which are right now powering the most money-making products on the planet, right? I mean, look at every app, and a lot of people from those industries are in the room. So a lot of the work which we have done in the industry right now is powering the most important internet technologies which consumers are using, right? I mean, billions of users are using it every day. Now, if I take a step back, then in the next few slides, I want to look at like, hey, the maturity of these systems are very, very different across different stages of companies, right? So what I want to do is I want to walk through in the next 5 slides on, if I look at a seed stage company versus a mature public company, then the need on multiple dimensions evolve over a period of time. So on the x-axis, we're going to look at time and scale. On the y-axis, we're going to look at maturity of the company, right? So we're going to start with looking at like a seed stage company, Series A, Series B, ... public company, right? So if you're a very, very small startup, then you won't have complicated access models, right? You're not doing enough personalization, of course. You start with single retrievers, you start with simple heuristics, you start with some manual data sets, and then when you mature, you start having multiple retrievers. You start doing personalized heuristics. You start with a V1 set of metrics. Maybe you cannot do an A/B test depending on how many users you have. And then you transition into a slightly more mature company, slightly more mature systems. You start introducing two-stage rankers, different optimization objectives. You start having different models, and your metrics evolve, right? You start caring about diversity, discovery, and a bunch of other metrics. Once you're really mature, then you start saying that, hey, I can do bandits, I can do multi-objective, I can have balancing models. Maybe now my experimentation agility is really important. And we start doing like randomization, we start doing IPS, we start doing counterfactual evaluation. Up until now, probably you or your team don't even deserve to tackle a bunch of these hard evaluation problems. And once you're a public company, then you have really nuanced systems, constraint optimization. You're looking at impact, fairness, societal bias impact, and all these, right? Now, this is not a very prescriptive view that, of course, like some seed stage companies might do counterfactuals as well. But when I look at the industry or a set of companies, right, then like this is how things have matured. Now, this is what we've been doing, right? And we've had great progress. We've had amazing impact on the industry, amazing impact on the billions of users using some of these products across many verticals: music, short videos, news feeds, photographs, social sharing, all of that. Now, if I take a step back, then what's happening right now, and I think I just was told, like Ed, she also gave a very inspiring talk around like the evolution of recommendations leading us to this notion of like personal assistants, right? Now, the view I have is a bit more enterprise work-centric view. So this is going to be biased from the lens which like I selfishly view things at now. So my point is, like, for the last 20 years, we have perfected personalizing consumption. And the next frontier, at least from the lens at which I'm looking at it, and a bunch of us are looking at it, is the next frontier is personalizing execution. And also the 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 number of words per minute coming out of me up until now was fast, because I quickly wanted to get done with like what has led us here. And now I'm going to slow down, start talking a bit more slowly around some of these topics. So essentially, the way I see things now is we are developing these agentic systems which can actually do work. And it's not about retrieval, it's not about recommending you something, it is about real, tangible work which has value in itself. I've far lived for 10 years in a world wherein we're trying to hunt for proxies of satisfaction, proxies of value. And now I'm so happy that I can directly jump into actual tangible value creation. And now this problem is very fundamentally different. The action spaces are different, the stakes are much higher, the feedback is different, right? So what I'm going to do in the next few slides is I'm going to compare classic Rexes with agentic systems, and what are we even talking about when we start thinking about the horizontal lens of personalization in each of them, right? So let's start with classic Rexes. I mean, we're going to do left and right both. So the classic recommendation systems, we've cared about consumption. Right now, in the agentic systems, we care about execution. What that means is the objective so far has been on maximizing conversion engagement. And now the objective becomes maximizing the actual value creation, right? The work output, the efficiency in the work output. The core problem up until now was, hey, I gotta pick up items which are maximizing the click probabilities, right? I mean, or some sort of engagement signals. Now I'm looking at the expected outcomes the expected value on the actual outcomes, on the actual outputs over the set of action spaces my agent has access to. The user so far in the classical Rex's world was individual users using our products. Now it's more about, at least again, this is not the personalized assistant view. This is like the B2B enterprise centric view. Now the users are teams, orgs, individuals across various skills doing various different workflows of complexity. So the user shifts. The item which I was recommending up until now was content and product. Now I'm recommending other things, right? Right now item becomes plan. It becomes a decision. It becomes the actual work artifact. It becomes a bunch of analysis which you do. In terms of feedback, we've far relied on clicks, engagement, dwell time, watch time, right? Now the feedbacks are like, hey, was it useful for you? Was it actually done? How many edits? How many approvals? How many reverts? How many rollbacks? How many incidents? So the quantification of the feedback also changes. The risk, I mean, I wouldn't say it was entirely low, at least at like entertainment recommendation is slightly lower risk. I mean, you can skip a song, right? You can skip a short video. But then here, when you do the work, you're actually consuming resources to doing the work, right? So there you have to be a bit more cautious about the risk. And then the time scales, we've done in-session personalization, right? If I spend, let's say, 10 minutes on one of these short video apps, I'm going to consume 50 items, right? Very short horizon. But now the time scale is going to be like really long horizons, right? I mean, you're doing like work across days and also compressing months long of work into like a session probably, right? So credit assignment and a bunch of those become important problems. Let's take a step back. This is the core shift around, hey, the kind of focus we've had in terms of enabling consumption now shifts to the focus on enabling execution. So if that's going to happen, I mean, this is happening now. So then, in addition to caring about personalizing the consumption behavior, so now we start caring about personalizing the execution behavior. So that's where the learning loop changes, right? Now the agents now start learning by closing the loop between the actions and the observed feedback, which is, did you do the job now? So again, right? I mean, some of the actions are, you can generate a plan, you can generate a pull request, you can deploy an experiment to production, blah, 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 right? Now feedback signals are either fast, you can make some edits, you can make some latency improvements, or slow, right? I mean, the impact from an A/B test, the impact with like some cost reductions, and the metrics are also different, right? I mean, like how much did I have to edit the plan? How much did I have to handhold you and how much they had to control you in executing it, right? Were you always relying on me, or were you able to independently execute it? And was I happy with the outcome? So a bunch of these things are changing, right? Most importantly, and this is the fact I love, right? That the objective function is now changing, right? I mean, like I've read hundreds of papers, and like we've a lot of causal inference work has gone into the industry for creating amazing proxies of value. We had to do that. Now I love it. It's still a hard problem, but at least now we can directly jump on the real value itself, right? Because now these agents are doing tangible work. So now, I mean, again, right, you do end up with a bunch of multi-objective problems with harder constraints, and but also massively bigger impact. But the main shift is from optimizing from for a proxy of value to now real value itself. So again, I mean, now we're going from predictions and ranking to structured generation and planning problems, from recommending passive pieces of content to actual artifacts of work being done. From, I mean, it's not stateless. We were stateless 20 years ago. We're not stateless anymore. Look at the real-time nature of most of these recommendation products now, which we should be proud of. They were sequential, but now they're deeply stateful, like really long horizon, deeply stateful problems. Taking a step back, right? So what we've said is we've spent the last 20 years building amazing recommendation systems, but it's still, right? I mean, the industry is very scattered, right? I mean, not every team deserves to tackle counterfactual evaluation. There's a maturity spectrum around which teams and companies evolve, and they need that at different stages. That's where we are. Taking a step back, the shift is now from not only doing personalized consumption, but also personalized execution. So we just kind of high level mention that what does the left versus right view look like here? Now I'm going to go into slightly more details. Now, again, right, I mean, just a brief summary. This is KDD, a lot of amazing papers on agentic frameworks already. A lot of you have built far more advanced agentic systems than I have so far. So again, I'm preaching to the choir here. But just to set the tone, right, we're talking about a modern agentic system, which has models, which is a cognitive core, which has a lot of context, it has a bunch of tools, and it has a system behavior architecture, right? So we are already talking about a kind of a, it's not a monolithic system, it's a modular system composed of individual components. They're all working together to create an amazing accomplishment of complex tasks. So that's the background, right? Now, in this setup, right, I mean, if I start looking at what are the new dimensions of personalization for me now, right? I have a new surface. We have a new surface of personalization, which is agentic execution. And I'm going to personalize agentic execution. Right now, if I were to do that, then what are these dimensions, right? What is the vocabulary for me to start thinking about this lens? So we're going to look at a bunch of these vocabularies, high level, and then go into slightly more detail. So one is like, who am I working for? I mean, these agents that are doing work. I mean, again, I would love for you to divide your mental thinking into personal agents, which is B2C lens, and enterprise-centric agents, which is B2B lens, right? The personal agents view has like, yeah, a lot of browser users and all of that, right? Bunch of what we talk about will apply there. But at least for the next half of the talk, I want to focus on like, hey, these agents which are doing real tangible work in like actual business settings. So there the question is like, hey, you're a great agentic system. Who are you working for? Right? I mean, what's the maturity of the team, right? What's the decision rights do you have? What sort of capability, what sort of seniority team has? Then from the team, you go to task and project context, right? I mean, like, are you okay with, I mean, is the goal defined? Is it ambiguous? Are there like SLAs to be met? Is this urgent? Is this like, hey, it's a bet for me. It's okay if you fail. In terms of the process, like, do you get like full autonomy? Do you get like limited autonomy? What's the risk posture like? What's the modality of interaction? Do I want to go back and forth? What's the artifact? Are you creating a dashboard, a doc, a PR, a notebook? What's the org structure like? What's the learning memory like? All of these, right? So again, rather than going into specific details, let me pinpoint, if an agentic system is doing a bunch of this, then what sort of levers I have now to control this behavior. These levers enable me to develop new personalization policies. So one is, let's personalize the autonomy tiering itself, right? What I mean by autonomic tiering is, do I trust you that, hey, go do the work? You're a staff engineer, and I trust you with execution. You're going to write a good RFC, you're going to execute on that, you're going to come back, and you're going to make me proud, right? So that is like very, very hands-off. And in the industry, if you have such amazing staff engineers, then you're blessed, right? I mean, you have great talent on your teams. But often you're hand-holding a lot, right? You're looking at like, hey, no, I don't trust you with this. I'm going to probably look at everything. You're not allowed to make major changes. I don't even give you access to BigQuery rights. You cannot edit file, you cannot drop tables, blah, 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 right? So based on the trust between the team and the agent, now we got to personalize, hey, how much tiered autonomy do I want to give you, right? And this is also tiered, not just like, hey, yes, 0, 1, 3. It's like tiered along multiple dimensions. I can give you a lot of code edit rights, but probably I can give you very little like database edit rights, right? So again, it's going to be hierarchical from that lens. Then in terms of the ambition calibration as well, right? That maybe you've picked up a very, very bold plan, and there's no way in hell that you're going to be able to execute that, right? So right sizing the scope to the team maturity is also going to be very important, right? I mean, you're doing a lot of fancy solutioning, but this team is like really not there, right? So the team maturity is the team or the tool users maturity should be used to personalize the ambitiousness of the plan itself. Then I got to personalize the tool chain selection, right? I mean, again, based on, look at my stack, look at like, hey, what are my infra needs? Look at, is this an important project for me? You're now using a bunch of GPUs, which it's, hey, it's a pet project. I just want to see whether there is enough value in it, right? So then why are you going all the way in and developing fancy solutions? I don't want you to do that, right? The other point is entitlement awareness, right? I mean, just I've given you only a small amount of stuff, just use that, right? Why are you asking for more? So again, tool chain itself is such an important component of the agentic stack. And we're not even talking about like tool discovery, tool creation, tool selection, right? Just the element of personalizing it all based on the task at hand, based on the team at hand, based on the awareness you have of my systems, of my need, all of that is now going to be personalized. Then we're talking about the evidence, right? You've done the work, great. Now, how do you convince me? What sort of input do I need, right? I mean, do I need inputs at each stage? Do I need an executive summary? Or am I a smart enough engineer to look at the PR diff? All of these changes based on who are you working with? Are you working with a product leader? Are you working with an engineering leader? Are you working with an engineer? Or are you working with like some other business context people, right? So there's a need for like you personalizing the evidence and you kind of drafting the output based on who you're dealing with. Then there's going to be a lot of like personalization experimentation, right? So again, I mean, if you're a coding agent, you're going to experiment differently. If you're a data agent, you're going to experiment differently. You're going to have to come up with the most quickest validation. If you look at Cursor, if you look at AMP code, a bunch of these coding agents are now doing, if you're doing a complex task, complex multi-repository code task, they're going to write a very quick A/B test. They're going to write a very quick unit test, not A/B test. They're going to write a unit test. They're going to run it, and once it works, they go back and delete the unit test, right? Why? Because now the evaluation is literally evaluation on the fly. There are enough traces right now deciding that, hey, I got to evaluate this change. Let me write a quick unit test. They run the test, and once the test succeeds, they're like, great, I've vetted it. Now let me go back and delete the test itself. So this is the agility now in how these agents are doing evaluation of each component of a change at a time, which is mind blowing, right? Because now the granularity at which we can evaluate is far bigger than the granularity at which we were used to in the industry so far. So taking a step back, and we're heading to the last segment. We'll wrap up in like close to 5-7 minutes. There are these multiple dimensions of evaluation, right? And we've just covered barely 5 of them right now. When we start talking about agentic execution, now these agents are being used to do work across so many different dimensions, right? Across finance, across marketing, across engineering, across data, across like n number of verticals, across n number of companies in the industry. Give us such new rich surfaces wherein right now we're just building the agentic core. We're just building the agentic systems. And then to make it work across 100 different teams, we have to start adding this new layer of personalization, right? Which maybe starts looking like some of this. Now the question is like, hey, what if I don't do this, right? Why should I even care? Just because we are in this room talking about personalization, that's not the motivation. The motivation is that if you don't do this, these systems are going to fail in unique ways, right? It's not about the model accuracy anymore. It's not about users skipping a song, right? The stakes are a lot more bigger now. One example is like corporate cold start. I mean, you don't know anything about how we do, and then you suddenly pick up a fancy plan. Or if you're working with a very, very mature team and you pick up a stupid plan, both of them are wrong, right? You gotta understand the maturity of my solutions, the maturity of my team, know who you're dealing with, and then come up with an appropriate plan. Stability overreach. The plan might be brilliant, but it's impossible to execute. Or the plan might be very, very conservative, and I have far better things which we have done in the past. If you don't tackle this well, then the agentic system is like almost not as good. The other point on credit assignment becomes huge now, right? I mean, the magnification of the assignment problems. When you look at one agentic system doing a series of just one complex task, right? Multiple steps. Now things go right, go wrong. The amount of counterfactual trajectories which now get generated is insane. And this is when we're talking about one agent doing one sort of task. And right now in the industry, there are these power users who are throwing 10 different agents at massive repositories, and they're all intermingling, right? So the amount of counterfactual journeys and the credit assignment and the blaming of, hey, this is wrong because that was wrong, this space is so much more magnified now, right? So the kind of research problems which pop up here is going to be very interesting. And then again, of course, like we've spent a lot of time, I personally have spent a lot of time in multi-stakeholder systems. So here it's like, yeah, man, like the agent is optimizing someone goals one, which violates somebody else's goals too. And it'll have to be aware of a bunch of those things. So I'm going to end by mentioning, again, right? I mean, there's going to be a bunch of problems to be solved, some high-level view around few of them. So we started doing a lot of causal inference, and a lot of experts in this room have been great people doing like the Pearls, Judea Pearls causality, a lot of counterfactual evaluation. Even the organized Netflix really pioneered the use of counterfactuals, and a bunch of others really did well along. Now, again, just one of the dimensions around causal impact is going to be like, hey, I mean, can I do an impact modeling of do the action, and what's the impact it's going to drive, right? I'm gonna provision resources. Do you need GPUs? Do you need more compute? Do you need more LLM credits? All of that, if I can do better impact planning, causal task planning, then I can do a bunch of those. Now I also need hierarchical preference learning. The preference learning in these agentic systems are going to be understanding the org, team, role, project, individual, and then informing what gets done. The corporate core sort problem, right? I mean, the core side personalization, I don't know how things work in your company. I'll have to kind of bootstrap my understanding somehow. The amount of lifelong drift, right? I mean, the system's mature, right? I mean, I've been using Cursor and a bunch of these Cloud Code tools because I've been using it for the past 3 months, for example. Now, the state of my repository today is very different than it was last month. So the amount of the choices you made in implementation last month should be very different than what you make today. Why? Because my system has evolved. You have helped me evolve that system, right? So the amount of drift and the dimensions of drift now in terms of system maturity, team maturity, all of that has to be taken into account. And the last point on really long trajectory of policy evaluation, I mean, that is something which we need to start paying very, very close attention to. So taking a step back, like where are we? I mean, this is the last slide. I think we have done amazing work across the spectrum on personalizing recommendations, consumption, really driving value to the user when we are at best a proxy of that value. But now I think the next decade is not necessarily guided by the recommendations we generate, but by the agency we unlock, right? Because the systems which are being designed today are doing real, tangible, quantifiable work. So now I think it unlocks an amazing set of personalization problems, which I mean, at least I am, and a bunch of us are very excited about. So yeah, that's a quick 20-minute talk.
Thank you so much, Vishal. Very speaker. Awesome. We have a few minutes for questions. You are able to hear us, right, Vishal?
Yes, I'm able to hear us. Yes.
While we wait for a question from the audience, I have a quick question. You laid out a very kind of future-looking pathway to what it would take to go from personalization to execution, like personalized execution in an agentic manner. In your opinion, to get this to any production system that is doing meaningful, even if it's just scoped one task that is doing it meaningful, We can take, let's say, low-touch example, where it's taking from the personalized preference into actually making an order or talking to an in-store person. What according to you is the biggest challenge that companies have to kind of overcome? I know you laid out some of the challenges, but what
Yeah,
stands
yeah,
out to you the most?
yeah. I think what one lens to look at it, right? I mean, which example do we even? I mean, again, I wanted to add one specific use case, right? I mean, I didn't end up doing that apparently. If I were to add like, hey, what could we do tonight, right? What would I do as a personalization researcher tonight? Is going to be, hey, where is this deployed the most? Where is this agentic system creating a lot of value? Right? There are two examples. I mean, there are many examples, two of them, right? Deep research, right? Deep research is where it's doing, again, right? I mean, massive users using it. I mean, slightly in the consumer-centric lens. The other is like, let's say, I mean, AMCode or Klein or Cursor being deployed inside companies, right? There, the agents are creating tangible amount of software development work. And again, right? I mean, in the enterprise lens, that's like massive right now. And even here right now, right? I mean, a lot of it's not respecting my repositories, right? The plan is generating. It's not aware of like, hey, look at my code repository. There's already a bunch of semaphores being applied, a bunch of other solutions there, a bunch of hints on how mature is my system. How right now it deals with me as a staff engineer, very, very similar to how it deals with an intern writing code, right? And I think there's enough scope for creating new value by personalizing a bunch of those things already, but at the cursors of the world, right? Depending on the maturity of the product, a bunch of companies are having really mature agentic systems, so they also deserve to start working on personalization. And this goes back to this plan, right? That not everybody, I mean, deserve is the wrong word, slightly more harsher word, but not everybody has to care about all of this at day one, right? I mean, we've seen that in the industry, that if you're a smaller company, you probably shouldn't care about counterfactual evaluation just yet. You don't even have 10,000 users. How are you going to do counterfactuals, right?
Makes sense. Thank you. Any other questions for our speaker? There is one.
Hey, Rishabh, can you hear me? Mayank here from Advisor. I'm curious, so with the tool orchestration, we specifically spoke about personalization of when to use what. In typical personalization, the representation was latent, right? But now it's a little more verbose. So how do you account for that interaction missing now? If my question makes sense.
I mean, can I repeat the question and you can correct me? So you're saying that, hey, if to personalize, right, we spend a lot of time in designing great representations, right? Representing users, representing items, representing interactions, having models around that. Now, in this new landscape, what is the corresponding equivalent? Or what does representation mean now? Is that the question?
Yeah, exactly.
Great, perfect. Yeah. So I think so why did we need, I would go back and say that, hey, why did we need representations? We needed representations. Look, we never really cared about representation. The goal was not to come up with the best representation on the planet. The goal was to come up with the best recommendation to the user, right? I mean, we never officially cared about representation for representation's sake. We cared about representation because having a better representation made me do a better recommendation to the user. It was always about the end goal. What that means here is, again, rather than caring about the representation, I'll say that, hey, we care about the end goal, and we saw improving representation will make me improve the end goal. If I borrow that here now, and if I have the same mental model, then here I care about value being delivered. I care about work being done, right? So now the question is like, hey, where is the most fruitful way for me to innovate so that I can get better work, right? And this is around these agentic systems, which is, I mean, the lowest hanging fruit right now is tools, right? I mean, teaching these agents to use the right set of tools is the most important thing, because now representations comes in the tool as well. How are you representing these tools, right? If you look at Cursor, Cursor has a, again, I mean, there's no affiliation with Cursor, Cursor is one of the tools I love. If you look at the amount of MCP servers Cursor has right now, it has a bunch of 1,000+ tools available. Right now, if you are deciding on your execution path, you now have to represent each tool, because the actual plan will be like, hey, I'm going to pick up this tool, and then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to pick up the other tool, and then I'm going to compose these tools together. So if I really want to work on representation, I'll work on representing the tools in a hierarchy, and then make sure that the plan generation is aware of this hierarchy and picking up the right tools at the right time. So again, that's one lens to it.
I see. Yeah, I think that's sort of what I was looking for, basically, like what the implementation would look like and how to think about it. So yeah, thanks for that.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Hi, thank you for the talk. Sort of building on the previous question, wondering if you consider personalization in this setting, like particularly if you're thinking about enterprise potentially, are you thinking about it as meta policy learning? Like if you want to generalize across companies, for example?
Yeah, I think, I mean, let me rephrase the question because I think I got 40% of it. So you're saying that should we be representing this problem as a meta learning problem? High level planning, right? High level learning, essentially.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think I'll go back to this. The reason why I have this, right, is because in 2000, I mean, when the Netflix is the organizer, great. When the Netflix challenge was happening 20 years ago, right, we did not wake up to this system as an industry, right? I mean, we started at max here, right? I mean, we had one collaborative filtering model, which took us a while to get right, and then we could do recommendations and evaluations, right? Over a period of time, in the next 20 years, we have made it this. So the question is it too early to do meta learning? What are we do meta learning on, right? So I would say that to me, it's a budgeting problem, budgeting of like, where do I want to focus? I can do meta learning for one of these models, right? If I care about just intent models, and should I do meta? I mean, again, intent model gets replaced by plan generation, right? Or tool planning or tool discovery. Now, should I do meta learning on tool discovery, or should I do meta learning on this entire system itself? My point is, maybe we are not even converged on the entire system. So what do we do? What do we even do meta learning on top of, right? Are we doing it at the, sorry, are we doing it at this, yeah, I mean, essentially, are we doing it at this level, or are we doing it at a component level, right? So I think these are the kind of questions which we'll probably start thinking about to see where does meta learning make more sense. If I do meta learning on plan generation, and I have shitty, really horrible tool discovery, then what's the point? Even if you have a better plan, you're just not able to pick up the right tools, right? So I think picking up the right problem based on the maturity of the system is important, because the models and the systems go hand in hand.
All right. Thank you. If there are no more questions, let's thank our speaker again. Thank you again, Richard.
Thanks so much.
And I hand it to Sebastian for closing remarks.
Thank you, everyone. This was a great workshop. We are very encouraged by the reception that we got at KDD. We're definitely thinking coming back here again. So if you're interested in serving on the program committee, please reach out to us. Search is changing a lot. Personalization is changing a lot. And so there are a lot of these exciting frontiers that need to be incorporated into the agenda itself. And of course, the speakers. And the program needs to be enriched. So if you're going to